Welcome to the Prairie State Wire Podcast. I'm Bryan Hyde. Today I'm joined by Carol Davis, who's chair of Illinois Conservative Union, and she is also very closely associated with and has worked with the National Election Integrity Project as a director for the DC-based Freedom Works. And Carol, so good to have you on the program. I know I'm missing a lot of things about you for those who are meeting you for the first time. Do you want to take just a moment to tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you so much, Bryan. Yeah, I have actually been a dogged proponent of election integrity for over a decade. I became an election judge in Illinois many years ago, over 20 years ago, and started seeing things I didn't like. So that kind of set us on a path. My organization was pretty much one that promoted conservative values here in Illinois. But we quickly focused on the election integrity aspect. And so that's been our primary focus for many years now.
So let's talk about Illinois as far as how does it stack up when it comes to election integrity among the various states? Give us the straight scoop. Is Illinois doing okay or have a little room for improvement?
Well, we've always known just from our work that Illinois needs improvement. But what was really shocking is that the Myers Group has recently done the Myers Report on election rules. It's called the Election Rules Review. And they not only compared Illinois to other states, but to many other countries, I believe like 30 some other countries. And I think the thing that was most shocking to me is that Illinois scores lower than Rwanda.
Oh,
when you find yourself scoring lower than a third world nation, you really should take that seriously.
So let's talk about some of the specific reasons why elections in Illinois are not secure, fair, or honest.
Well, I think it all begins with the voter rolls. And many people have heard a lot about, cleaning the rolls, they say. Well, we started early on to try to examine the rolls. And in Illinois, they made that very difficult for us. So there's actually a federal law called the National Voter Registration Act, NVRA. Some people will remember that as called the Motor Voter Bill. And that was passed during the Clinton administration. And part of that bill was it gave citizens access to the voter rolls. Unfortunately, just because there's a federal law doesn't mean your state's going to follow it. So we partnered with an organization in DC that many people are familiar with called Judicial Watch. They do a lot of great government watchdog integrity work. And back in 2017, I knocked on their door in D.C. and said, I'm from Illinois and I need help with election integrity. Once they picked themselves up off the floor from their laughing, that obviously a joke, but Illinois is not known for stellar elections, they agreed to help us. So we actually sued the state of Illinois to gain access, as federal law indicates, to those voter rolls. And when we found that we were able to examine them, it turns out there's about 800,000 ineligible voters that have been just parked on our rolls. And with only about 8.1 million registered voters in Illinois, that's 10%. And that could affect a lot of candidates in their races.
Talk to me about the timeliness of this as well, given that the current administration is very focused on election integrity.
Yes, and that is a welcome relief because we are nonpartisan, but we just want fair and honest elections. And as I said, it starts with the voter rolls. So now we have an administration who is really very serious about this. And in fact, at the Department of Justice, there is a woman who is now in charge of the Civil Rights Division, under which the Voting Rights Division is placed. And her name is Harmeet Dillon. And she has actually filed a letter of interest, in other words, a supportive voting document in support of our second lawsuit with Judicial Watch, which is to remove those 800,000 ineligible voters. That case is now working its way through the federal courts.
So, generally speaking, I know that there was concern, and I think there was legitimate concern over the 2020 election. But boy, there was also some heavy pushback where anybody who questions elections is kind of, pushed to the fringes. Is it okay? Have we crossed the threshold where it's okay to question election integrity? Or are we past that point where everybody who's in good standing has to, basically click their heels and say, oh, it's all fine. There's no questions here?
Well, unfortunately, there's still a group of very diligent people who anyone who brings up questions about 2020 is given the election denier moniker. And so we haven't completely gotten past that. And I have to say it's mostly people on the left end of the spectrum who are trying to denigrate, diminish those concerns. However, the polling shows that people on all sides of the aisles are concerned about our elections. So I think we really have reached a point at which we're turning. And, everyone just wants to know. They want the assurance that their vote is going to count. And I think that's what it boils down to. Who's going to volunteer to have their vote canceled out by someone who shouldn't be on the voter rolls? I don't think you'll find many people standing up and saying, I'll volunteer to have my vote canceled. So that's kind of where we're at.
So, Carol, how do we get the average citizen to do more than just show up to vote? I mean, it's great to register to vote, to show up on election day, but clearly what happens between elections also matters a lot. What do people need to be doing?
Well, first and foremost, they do need to get engaged in the process. And one of the best ways to do that is to become an election judge. That's what we call them here in Illinois. Those are the actual poll workers, and they conduct the election on the front lines. And I was one of those for many years, and they actually could go the extra mile. They get training from their county, but they could do what I did, kind of go the extra mile and start looking deeper at what other states are doing. We're fortunate in that our organization is part of a national network called the Election Integrity Network that was begun by an attorney called Cleta Mitchell, who was one of Trump's volunteer attorneys when in the 2020 election aftermath for Trump in Georgia. And she saw a lot of the things that we saw. And so that organization is great because it can help the average citizen learn more about the process. They have working groups. We have working groups nationally. And we work with blue states, red states, all states, and the cream of the crop of the best ideas float to the top. And then we as citizens in Illinois can advocate with our legislators to amend and change the election codes here in Illinois. So it's a little bit of a heavy lift for some people, but the great thing about our volunteers for our organization, our state Illinois State Coalition, is that we have little jobs and we have big jobs. We have spreadsheet jobs and we have just making phone call jobs. So, volunteer jobs that anybody can find their comfort level.
And Carol, correct me if I say this wrong, but it sounds like this is not a matter of waiting for lawmakers or waiting for elected officials to step up and do the right thing. This is about citizens being involved enough that the people they're electing really don't have a choice but to do the right thing in terms of maintaining their election integrity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we know everyone's got busy lives and it's hard. It's hard to find the time to do a few volunteer hours here and there. But as our founders warned us, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And eternal vigilance is hard. Anyone who's ever raised a toddler knows that that's the epitome of eternal vigilance. You have to watch that toddler all the time. And unfortunately, many of our elected officials are like those toddlers. We have to keep an eye on them, make sure they're not up to shenanigans, and make sure that they're making the right decisions.
So I have to ask, where does the greatest pushback against election integrity come from? At least in Illinois, someone's got to be pushing back. Who is that typically?
Well, I'm sad to say that it's the left. And again, we're nonpartisan, but we've invited many, many people from all spectrums to come alongside us. And unfortunately, those on the left are really the deniers. They call us the deniers, but they're the ones that are denying. One prime example lately is the citizen-only voting. We know what's happened over the last 4 years is they flooded the country with non-citizens. And most of those people aren't looking to, get over here and vote and change things. But unfortunately, when the left swept them in, their non-governmental organizations handed them many forms to sign. Sign this for food aid, sign this for healthcare, sign this for housing. Oh, by the way, sign this one too. Guess what? It's a voter registration application. So those people unwittingly have ended up on the rolls. Many people don't remember back in 2020, before that 2020 election, in January of 2020, we discovered over 500 non-citizens on Illinois voter rolls. It made national news. And of course, the Secretary of State said, oh, it was a glitch at the DMV. Well, yeah. The 500 plus are the only ones we discovered. Who knows how many more are on the rolls? That's why, thankfully, this administration now is setting in place tools where we can verify citizenship on our voter rolls. And we can do that at the county level. So if we don't have to wait for the Illinois State Board of Elections to verify citizenship. We can get our local county clerks to do that directly with the Department of Homeland Security. And if anyone wants details about that, please contact us and we'll walk them through the procedure.
Okay, and Carol, let's give some contact points as far as like the Illinois Election Integrity Program. Where can people go to find out more about that?
The easiest way to reach us is our very simple to find website, which is IEIP.org, Illinois Election Integrity Program, IEIP.org. And we also have a phone line, 630-830-0653. I personally will check that and get back to you, and we'll get you engaged or answer any questions you have. We've kind of become the answer place for all things related to elections in Illinois, and we're thrilled to help people with any questions they have and how they can get engaged.
And again, we've been speaking with Carol Davis. Carol, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about election integrity here on the Prairie State Wire podcast.
Thank you, Brian.